Now we're going to have Carla Fisher, who's going to be talking to us about not being that guy, and she may put in some references to hipster cats. That maybe, if you're lucky.
So before launching a game, you feel amazing, right? You're making a game for kids. It's funny. It's got cute characters. Kids can learn. You feel like the superhero because you've made this amazing game. And then it's released into the world. And I know that every single one of us secretly dreams of the amazing traffic, the reviews, the reception, the accolades that the game's going to bring. And then almost everyone, I'd argue 99%, end up feeling this moment kind of thing, where you realize that the app stores are brutal markets, and that really the kid space is some of the most challenging spaces there are. Our monetization strategies are incredibly limited. Subscription models are really hard to just convince parents to commit to. In-app purchases, we could spend an entire day just talking about the pros and cons and the pitfalls and the challenges around that. And when you just simply look at basic statistics, average app prices are at 80 cents. If you look at the education category, there's almost 96,000 active education apps. There's 150,000 active games apps. It is so crowded, it's no wonder you end up feeling like this. And there's existential crisis in the world where you end up questioning whether your life has any meaning or purpose or value. And I'd like to say that there's appistential crisis, which is basically questioning whether your app has any value once it's out in the world. And so I renamed this talk Dr. Carla's Appistential Crisis Marketing Tonic. And it's because it's really back to a focus on marketing strategies that lead users to make a purchase and to tell their friends. In the end, that's what it matters. It assumes a couple of pre-existing conditions. So one, simply that you actually made a product worth talking about, right? I'm assuming that is true. That's not always true, though, sadly. It also assumes that you're tirelessly working editorial connections at the app stores, at press outlets. You're doing everything you can on that front. It assumes you're doing your homework on SEO, keywords, all those basic good practices have been done, that you've implemented Rate My App sharing and analytics. If it's reasonably acceptable to do so for your audience, that's something that you and your audience need to figure out if you can use those features. And that you're tracking competitors' mentions for any intels, for press leads, that you're paying attention to what your competitors are doing. So assuming all those things are true, why then am I saying that the focus needs to be on purchases and sharing? So first of all, I am assuming an emphasis on purchases because you're operating a business. And the goal for all of us in the end is to make money, to fund more games, so that we can make more money to fund more games. Word of mouth also significantly matters. And there's some recent statistics that are just kind of interesting to look at. So this is from Apptentive. I was just asking, in general population, to what extent do you trust the following forms of advertising? Recommendations from people I know are trusted 92% of the time. Consumer opinions posted online matter 70% of the time. So that's really, and the rest are mostly editorial outlets, but those two really matter. Additionally, if you look at parents specifically, this is from the Parents in the Age of Digital Technology study that was just released. A parent finds content by watching or playing the content first 56% of the time. They report that 34% of the time it's recommendations from friends. So again, that sharing piece matters. 33% of the time it's the reputation of the brand or the network. 25% of the time the child finds it themselves. And then that website reviews are 13% of the time, and newspaper or magazine reviews are 5% of the time. So one of the biggest things for kids' brands is to actually approach your entire brand, your marketing, like a record label, right? Def Jam Records is amazing because you know every time you buy a Def Jam record, you are getting a certain kind of sound, a certain kind of artist. That record label approach is why you follow that particular record or that label. Books have the same kind, book imprints, authors. If you've noticed, trilogies are doing really well right now. It's because trilogies are much easier to package than one-off books. Every time you start with a one-off book from an unknown author, you're starting over from scratch. Trilogies, you have this natural audience that builds over time. So really, games need to approach that. Your brands need to approach in the same way. Whether you're PBS, whether you're Nickelodeon, whether you're some independent, chances are the market right now, the reality of it is that we're launching lots of different brands at the same time, or lots of different products. And creating the mindset that they're under an umbrella, and that umbrella brand is what's trusted and what parents begin to know and what kids begin to know, creates that record label approach that they're then going to follow you. And if you look at the indie game community in general, I think these guys are really good at fostering that kind of community, at engaging their fans. So no matter what they do, like Dejabon, no matter what kinds of things they do, you know that you're going to be following their stuff. So along the same lines of checking your mindset is actually just getting rid of the spam mindset. I know we're all stressed. There's only so much time in the day, which means we often feel that like, I've got to reach as many people as I possibly can, as fast as I can. So then you're suddenly spamming 500 people in a day, whereas really your goal should be to engage 100 customers personally. Just start with a number like 100. And if you start from the place of engaging those 100, you're going to get valuable feedback, but then you're also going to begin to foster a culture of personal service that's going a long way toward trust in your brand. And I realize that thinking about even engaging 100 can seem like a lot and can seem daunting. And you can pick whichever metaphor you want, that this is a marathon, not a sprint, that slow and steady wins the race, tortoise in the hare. But really, this is a long road, right? There's the path to overnight success, especially in the app stores, is really just not going to happen. Like, it's just that way. So thinking about it in that way of engage those customers for the long run is going to help, it's going to help you greatly. Additionally, setting those goals and really holding yourself to them matters. So there's the risk if you don't set goals and you're like, great, I sold 3 apps yesterday. You know, in reality, like, you can rationalize anything. But if you set those concrete goals to start, you have something to hold yourself accountable. And you can start from the place of simply, I want to get 10% more users next week, or I want to get 10% more active users next week, or I want to sell 10 more next week. So if you're starting from a place of 100, that's 10 more next week. It's really a small, little jumps as you go. And yes, over time, it starts to become pretty huge. But if your biggest problem is that your growth curve is such that you're now dealing with acquiring 1,000 new users a week, like, you've got a good set of problems to be thinking about. And then holding yourself to them, actually, the key to that is writing down those goals and sharing them with a trusted colleague. That there's actually research in general that if you write down and share goals, you're 33% more likely to be held to them and to actually achieve those goals. So it's as simple as just writing them down and sharing them. I love the data in general, but it's also really key to thinking about your growth. So moving into just thinking about what kind of message are you sending, there's obviously the basics of crafting your elevator pitch, right? You need to be able to describe your game, your product really quickly and succinctly. If you can't even do that for yourself, your marketing materials aren't going to be able to do it for your users. And it needs to be a very clear messaging. And I will tell you, as Ellie predicted, references to hipster cats, I will tell you how I screwed up in our marketing materials lately. This is Williamsburg. It's my indie game that is making its way into the world right now. And this is one of the first marketing images that we used in the App Store. And I literally got this email from somebody, completely unsolicited, random stranger. When I went to the Williamsburg landing page, despite scrolling through all the images, I had no idea what the game was about, who it was intended for, or even what genre it is. I only got some of that information after reading several reviews. In the course of a week, I got information like this from multiple points, from just showing people and talking about it. And I realized the App Store is not the place to be cheeky and funny, it's the place to be informative and very clear about what your game is. So we are in the process of replacing all of our marketing images, which still funny, still cheeky, but much more on-point messaging. So learn from my mistakes, don't do that. Not the time to be cute. It's also really important in your web content and all your other content to be very focused on purchases. There's always this temptation that you're like, I can do t-shirts, I can do things that you can forward, I can do all these other things. In reality, those things are not going to support your business. You want people to purchase your app. You want them to purchase your product. So your website should first and foremost serve as a conduit to find information and get to the App Store. Disney has done this really well. You could argue that they actually have too much text, but they have just focused their game site on get you to the downloads so that you can purchase it. I was talking with a friend of mine about Netflix as a case study that gets used often in marketing talks in general, that the Netflix homepage is this brilliantly simple, wonderful example of marketing. So there's a psychological phenomenon known as the eye gaze effect, and it's that when looking at a photo, your eyes naturally follow the gaze of the people in the picture. So in this particular case, your gaze goes toward the TV right through the Start Your Free Month Now button. This is a very simple technique that can be used very effectively. It's the eye gaze effect. It's standard marketing kind of stuff, but it's something that we can all take more advantage of. Video trailers are something that I think are really easy to forget about until the end, but they're important both because it helps the consumer try out the content, Also because reviewers often now embed trailers into their reviews, so then you can start to control the message that's going out to the users. But then I additionally found this study recently that in the mysterious world of search engine optimization, this is looking at eye gaze on search engine pages for Google. And eye gaze concentrated on the video search results. There's actually evidence now that if you do your homework with search engine optimization and have a video trailer, that can even help you in your search engine results page. So thinking about mobile-friendly sites, which feels, again, like sort of one of these obvious things, but I'm pretty surprised by the number of people when you go to their content don't actually have a good mobile-friendly site. That we know now about half of teens are doing most of their online browsing on mobile, so you need to be friendly for them. And then additionally, looking at what kinds of content gets shared on mobile. This is from the company Share This. They, over the course of 30 days, looked at 4.9 billion social signals, as they call them. And sharing was twice as more likely to happen on mobile devices than it was on desktop. Now, within this particular piece of the study, the blue is content that was shared on iPhone, and the red is content that was shared on iPad. The first category here is family and parenting content. So 20% of the iPhone content was family and parenting related. 17% about of the iPad content was family and parenting related. The only thing shared more on the iPad was food and drink. So again, you just want to make sure any of your content related to family, parenting, tech is in here too. It's going to be mobile friendly. But then thinking about what stuff people actually want to share. Like, I feel like this is a really tough nut to crack, but there's actually some really good basic guidance in what you do. Humans essentially share items that cause emotion, especially positive feelings of interest, amusement, and surprise. So interest being things that are informative, that provide you something that you didn't know, amusement just being those funny ha-has, and surprise being those moments where you're like, I totally didn't see that coming, kind of thing. So just some examples that I've been gathering over time. Autopsy of a failed agile project, right? It's fostering interest because it's telling you more about agile. It's fostering amusement because it's got a funny little catch to it in the way that they packaged it. I recently wrote a blog post on Kids Got Game about free-to-play. I took a page from CNN's Sexy Headlines 101 and went with, if you have no scruples, your game can make $600,000 a day. This had an inordinate number of shares and page views in the course of 3 days. It was fostering interest of things people don't know and surprise, because who wouldn't like to make $600,000 a day on their kids or family product? Another example from Andy Moore from Deja Bond Studios posted a tweet when Monster Loves You launched to Steam that said, I violated my NDA and shared the Monster Loves You sales data, and then posted a link to Vine. So the surprise element being who violates their NDA, the interest being they're sharing sales data, and then the amusement being that it's a Vine video of a crayon drawing. Again, created a lot of shares. The iOS game Hundreds shared this image when they hit 100,000 downloads. It's very simple. The bragging aspect of it actually got shared a lot because it, again, generated interest. You knew suddenly how they were performing, and it was surprised because who thanks people for getting 100,000 downloads? It was also consistent with their entire message and packaging. So just a really beautiful example here. Super Bowl was like one of the best examples of being timely and funny, right? Power goes out, everybody's stressed, Twitter's going nuts, and Oreo sneaks in, posts, you can still dunk in the dark, Audi sneaks in, posts, we're sending LEDs to the Superdome. These got shared an incredible amount of time. Not that any of us need to aspire to be so timely as that, but just being timely and relevant and thinking about things is actually a great way to just help push your message out a little bit more. Some other fun ones, I love SlideShare, incidentally, is like a microcosm of kinds of stuff that gets shared. Analytical method for finding the proper shoes, my favorite tipping point quotes, 12 terrible but funny places to work. I'm not saying like go post your content on SlideShare, unless your audience happens to be there, in which case go nuts. But it's this really great microcosm to look at interest and amusement and surprise all packaged in the same place. And on this 12 terrible places to work thing, I'm sure we've all seen BuzzFeed and all the adventures they're having of 10 ways to do this, 19 to do that, 12 to do this. So Conductor, thankfully, did a study of headlines for us. And what they found is that the number headline is actually very much preferred by folks. So 30 ways to make drinking tea more delightful, that number message, 36% of the time was preferred over simply reader addressing, which is ways you need to make drinking tea more delightful, and then the how-to and the normal and the question kinds of things are all kind of a wash there. Additionally, they looked at superlatives, and they found that if you're going to put superlatives in, you either go with an understatement or you go with an overstatement. So you either go the 27 ways to train a dog, or the 27 best ways to train a dog, or you go over the top with the 27 best and smartest ways ever to train a perfect dog. So use it how you will. There's also a lot of just riding on other people's coattails, right? If you look around the internet, there's tons of stuff that takes advantage of modding or of using other people's content. And SpongeBob, I think, probably is at the center of lots of that. And so there's Minecraft, if you look at the mods there. Toca Builders, thank you, Jordana, by the way, for this example. Toca Builders, Toca Boca recently launched Toca Builders, and they launched a campaign on Facebook that was a bunch of images that had been made in the Toca Builders world. So they did Elmo, which 4 people had shared, Duck Hunt, 15 people, Adventure Time, 20 people, SpongeBob, 370 people, right? So the moral of the story is probably just ride on SpongeBob's coattail, but at least like when you can feasibly, you might want to think about how you can incorporate those brands that have done well, and it may be even within your own brand thinking about those kinds of things. Guest blogging on like a totally different note. So in the battles for getting press, one way is actually forget trying to get reporters' attention and just go write your own stuff. There's lots of folks like Game Sauce, like Gamasutra, that are looking for postmortems or that are looking for information from developers of how they do things. And it can help boost your web visibility, it can help your search engine results, but you still have to make sure your content is worth sharing, right? At the heart, this is still about sharing. So thinking through that, even participating in FAQs and resource sites, that option to help out. Twitter is actually a great place too to offer information and kind of help out, as long as you're doing it authentically. So one place where we actually see this happen sometimes is on the blog I write. Every now and then we hit something that developers kind of push back on a little bit. And so I wrote a post a few months ago that was, excuse me, but your app is looking bloated. I was just talking about file size. And several people wrote in and contributed to the discussion, but they also were gracefully hawking their wares. And that's totally fine. That's part of this. That's part of being a social community. So there's ways to participate in these discussions and help boost your visibility. I think the thing with marketing that I really struggle with is we're all looking for that secret site that kids are on, that parents are on, and that no brand has discovered yet. And the reality is those things really just don't exist. So we're in a space where really it's about engaging the customers personally. It's about having a very focused message and then fostering emotion, particularly surprise, interest, and amusement, so that they encourage, or so that you encourage sharing, so that they're spreading the word for you. Then you go and you do these things in all the places where your audience spends time. So if they're parents, you're looking at Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest. If they're teens, you're looking at Vine or Instagram, or if they're kids, you're looking at the various places. And you just need to go and do your homework and spend the time in those places. Some resources that I really like, Moz.com has an incredibly overwhelming amount of information on there about search engine optimization, about marketing. A lot of these studies that I've found have come through that source. They have a lot of tools as well, but it's just a really great resource. And then in terms of books, there's scads and scads of books on marketing. These are some that I really like, that Made to Stick, Unmarketing, Influence, Pitch Anything, are really about crafting your message and getting back to thinking about human psychology and what people share. So, all of that said, I'm happy to share a copy of the slides with anyone who would like. I will be posting a summary of the talk on the blog on Kids Got Game on Monday. If you want to talk to me about Williamsburg, I'm happy to share. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Carla. Questions? There was a lot of information.
Do you have any tips on how to strike the balance of selling your content for the developers out there, but also being sort of a resource for parents as well, and where that line is of not just overtly being like, buy this app, but also engaging them as an audience, as parents?
Yep. So I tend to take the tack that really marketing starts from the day your project starts. And the way that your marketing campaign starts is actually by starting to engage the community and offering help. So you're not talking about your product really, unless you happen to have a community where they're interested in sort of pre-release views of things, but you're really just participating in the community. And so if you're on Twitter, you're sharing useful articles, you're sharing information, you're just there to be useful because it's essentially the karma points kind of system. So then when you're ready to share your stuff, people are much more willing to let you have those moments of shameless self-promotion because you've been so helpful along the way. So I think taking that approach that marketing starts from day one in the building of your audience then gives you the opportunity to do that. Cool. All right, I thank you all for being here. I know you had lots of choices today, so thanks.
Thanks, Carla.